So, hi everyone. I don't know how well this will actually work. I've sort of jerry-rigged the setup here. If you haven't noticed, I'm in my car. And today, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, decided they were going to reopen the state, quote unquote, as part of this whole, liberate Michigan, liberate California, blah, blah, blah crap. And I wanted to take a moment. I had to go out anyway to take some trash to the local dumpster, or not dumpster, but the recycling center rather. I want to take a moment and take the long way and kind of show you what it looks like right now. We've just finished rush hour, so people have just gotten home. It's maybe 7:30 at night, and we have stores are closing at 8 o'clock. There's a close down order for Target, for H-E-B, the local grocery store, things like that, where we have people needing to shop from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So they're the midnight hour, which is my preferred hour to go shopping because there aren't any people, is right out. But you can see here that we've passed a couple sets of students kind of milling around. Most of the students have gone home to shelter in place with their families, but we still have some around here, and you see they're not really wearing masks or anything. It's kind of interesting, the social dynamics of who's wearing a mask and who's not. I think it maps a lot to socioeconomic status in this area, but you can see people are still out and about. There's still people riding bikes. People still getting home. By and large, they are following social distancing guidelines. You really only see groups of 2, maybe 3. But the issue is you're going to see this in the grocery stores and in Target and Walmart and places like that as well. This is pretty par for the course as far as what how serious people are taking the notion of kind of covering up to try to stop the spread of the virus. And my worry is that if they were kind of this lackadaisical with the notion that the state was supposed to be kind of in a shelter-in-place situation, that with this whole social movement to quote-unquote reopen the country, which is, in my mind, is really predicated on the notion that I'm going to be safe, but if you die, that's okay. We're going to see an uptick in cases here in Texas, and this is we're not talking a big city or we're open. This city, this College Station, exists solely because of the university. It is sort of the Texas equivalent of a college town. And so what we have here is very much an educated suburban populace. People who are no doubt paying attention to the various news reports coming out on both sides. And we're not talking people who are going online and looking up stuff on the local QAnon site and taking that as gospel. I think there's a real social aspect of things. People in the U.S. are not used to the notion of wearing masks on a regular basis, and so they just aren't. And I think what's happening is that a lot of the people who are here as exchange students, because a lot of the exchange student population is mostly still here, who might be inclined to wear masks if the social conditioning was such that it was an expectation, aren't doing it because they're seeing that the Americans aren't doing it. And like I said, I think the people that you're primarily seeing wearing masks tend to be people with a lower socioeconomic status. So I've noticed here, because the way the racial and economic disparity tends to play out in this area, a lot of people who are doing the service jobs are African American, and they will predominantly be wearing masks when they're out and about. Whereas, sorry about that, I'm carrying brace and it just slammed into the back of the seat because I don't have room in my house to put it. But anyway, the people who are of a lower socioeconomic status tend to be wearing masks. I think because they can't afford to get sick. And they are being put on the front lines. And like I said, here that tends to be the African American population. Other places it differs. But the people I'm seeing that are primarily ignoring it tend to be college students, and it's not that sort of spring break, if I get corona I'll die, so what sort of mentality we saw about a month ago. It's more that I just don't think they think about it. But also people who are in their 20s and 30s, sometimes 40s, just aren't wearing the masks either. The two groups that I'm seeing that are primarily wearing them tend to be the African American community and people who are older, people who are in their 60s and up, people for whom there's a real chance that they do catch the disease, it will hit them really hard. I don't know what to make of that. I did a little informal poll on Facebook just out of curiosity, wondering what the general mix was in other places. And as far as I can tell, the places where there's been a sense that the powers that be, the state government, because heaven knows we're not getting any federal guidance, the state government put guidelines in place, they seem to be taking it a lot more seriously. And it's not always the places that were hardest hit. We're not always talking about New York City, for example. It can be other places as well. And I think what's happening here is that we have a country that's balkanizing anyway, because we're not all singing from the same hymnal, so to speak, as far as what facts we consider facts and things like that. But not only that, but also we have a country that's balkanizing because we are not getting a single kind of set of guidelines. It's all well and good that Trump says he's there to back the governors up, but then he interjects himself in this conversation because the man has no ability not to try to hog the spotlight. But he also doesn't want to, take any blame, even though God knows he deserves a ton of it. Because he doesn't want to take any blame, he interjects himself, but then he says, well, it's up to the governors. I'm just here for support. By the way, you really should be doing more about it. There was a exchange between he and Andrew Cuomo earlier today where he said a tweet and Cuomo finally lost his shit, so to speak, pardon my language. And because of that balkanization, because of those different cultures, every state is handling it slightly differently. We're going to see a real patchwork of people, who lives and who dies. And getting back to Texas, I'm deathly afraid that we are going to see Texas be one of the states that dies. Yes, it's big. Yes, it's very rural in spots, but it also has a tendency to try to impose top-down edicts and then pretend it's not doing it. It's very much like what Trump's trying to do, actually. And I could very much see the state government deciding that cities like Austin or San Antonio or El Paso having their own ordinances makes them look bad, and so they'll try to do some sort of top-down approach. And if they do that with the current situation, I don't think they're going to be necessarily reckless about it. I would like to think that they have more care and concern for their citizenry than that. But I do think they're much more concerned about the economic impact than about whether or not people live or die. And I think that a lot of the people who we're seeing not wearing masks and such have been insulated from real situations for a very long time, life or death kind of stuff, and have been fed kind of a slow drip feed of propaganda in some ways. There's two students over there on the right with no masks on, and those various types of propaganda, they're going to end up killing them. They're going to end up killing people. my big concern is all of this stuff here on the right. This is all offices, apartments, and down at the bottom they have various stores and restaurants and such. And right now those restaurants are all takeout only. My concern is that there will be enough pressure in terms of the economy put on the government that they will go ahead and open these back up to sit down food. And in the early days of things, when supposedly everything was under lockdown, but they had not passed any kind of measures about not having sit down restaurants, we would go out to run an errand or pick up food or something, or grocery store or whatever, and we would see people basically get their food and then be sitting down outside in a group of 6, 7, 8. And we are nowhere near the peak of this coronavirus situation here in Texas at the moment. I think when I looked it up, they were talking sometime in May, either very, very late April, so a couple weeks from now, or May, and that's the peak. That's when we're on the downward slope. It doesn't mean it just suddenly goes away. And as anybody who's done any kind of work with the Spanish flu, the influenza epidemic of about 100 years ago from now, could tell you, a lot of times states or municipalities would see a dip in the numbers, and they would go ahead and reopen things back up, and then see a sharp spike because all of a sudden people are mingling back together again, and that trailing end of people who are sick are just as virulent. There's just not as many of them. So this whole thing here on the right would ordinarily be bars and such. It used to be little restaurants and local shops, but the university decided they wanted to make it bars and restaurants. For those of you in Phoenix, it's sort of their equivalent of Mill Avenue or 6th Street in Austin. So, and the campus here has been on the left. You really haven't been able to see it because of the way the camera's situated. Once I drop my recycling off, I'll go ahead and restart things and give you kind of a sense of, maybe drive through campus a little bit, give you a sense of where things are. Campus is very dead. The Texas A&M campus is very dead. My campus that I teach at has been pretty much closed down. You're not allowed to actually go to campus, even if you're going to your office or anything like that. And I applaud that. I think it's a good idea. So this is the turnoff to go drop off this recycling. So I will make this turn, cut the camera, do my business, and then I'll pick back up here in just a second. Okay, and as you can see, the parking lots are all empty and sort of pretty much devoid of students. So that is one thing that they did right. The universities were on the ball. Okay, so I'll be back in just a sec. Okay, well, hopefully this works. I'm back, so I dropped off. This is kind of interesting here. These giant dumpster things here on the left ordinarily are separated out by particular types of recycling. It's all one big dumpster underneath, but they would have the illusion they've sectioned it off. That illusion has sort of fallen by the wayside, and they're just saying, put anything in here that's supposed to go in. So this is the west part of Texas A&M. It is the part that is generally dedicated to the sciences primarily. And as you can see, there really isn't many people around. And what I'm going to do is I'll drive down Wellborn. A&M is sort of kind of built on a 5-mile square block. And what we're looking at here is the western part of that block. And this is all newish construction. It must be dorms and stuff here on the right. So I'm going to go out and take the sort of the opposite edge of the block from the one that you saw, and loop back the way I came so that you can see more of the actual campus, because it just occurred to me that if I do what I was originally thinking and just kind of complete the square, you still won't be able to see any of it. So, like I was saying, I think the university did a pretty good job of trying to get things done, get their students set up. I know at least some of my colleagues at my campus have been working really hard. There's been a lot of grousing, no small part by me, but they have been working pretty hard to try to make things happen for the students. All right, so heading back the way we came. So yeah, this all used to be much less built up, and this is where a lot of the infrastructure money has been going. And then you may be able to see it off in the distance to the far right, but that's the $500 million football stadium they built. Not going to be seeing much use out of that lately, anytime soon. So I'm not as concerned about the university as a vector for transmittal or anything like that. I think the powers that be at both the university and my little college are going to keep the students home at least for the rest of this semester, and there's entirely a possibility that summer courses, if there are summer courses, may be online as well. I'm more concerned about sort of the community at large. And like I said before, I really think that it's a function of culture more than anything else. I mean, these are not dumb people. It's just a situation where we're not culturally inculcated to the notion of putting masks on. And so because of that, people just aren't doing it. And my worry is that anytime there's a lessening of restriction, not that I'm in favor of lockdown and restrictions and all that, but anytime there's a lessening of the restrictions in place, people are going to take that as a sign that things are over, and start going out without a mask on, start going into places if they have a fever, and more people are going to get sick. And while I suspect most of the students in these large buildings here that you just saw on the left have gone home, but they haven't all gone home. And I'm not, a building like that is just a ready-made hotspot for this kind of virus, because these dorm things, these apartment dorms, this is not an actual dorm by the campus. This is private apartment complex, but it might as well be a dorm. Tend to be built on sort of a suite model where you have 4 separate rooms, and then there's like a shared kitchen and a shared living room area, and you could have anywhere from 4 to 8 people living there if you're filling up the whole space. And these people are not necessarily all friends, and not necessarily all from the same place. They're coming from different places. They're renting by the room, they're not renting by the apartment. And so it creates a situation where they've if one of them catches it because they have to work or something. Because another thing is, a lot of these students, a lot of the people who are the frontline workers, the quote unquote essential employees, are students. They're working at the local grocery store, or they're working at the gas station, or they're working at any one of a number of other. I have a student that's in the National Guard, and he wrote me and said, today is my first day off in 2 weeks. I'm going to try to catch up on the class. What do I need? And it's, I'm worried about that, because like you keep seeing, they aren't necessarily wearing masks when they're out and about, and they're being put at risk. And a lot of my students anyway, not necessarily the students for who are at A&M, but my students tend to be if they're not going to my campus because they don't have the grades to get into A&M and they're trying to boost their grades up, they're going to my campus because they don't have the money to go to A&M, which means that they are very likely doing those sorts of jobs, and they don't really want to. Something that has happened when I've had conferences with students time and again is they're doing these jobs. They need the money. They need to pick up extra shifts, or their folks just got laid off, or they didn't get the small business loan because Bruce Chris Steakhouse decided it needed 2 loans as opposed to 1, and as a multiple thousand employee company. And so they're doing what they can, and I just worry that we're in the eye of the storm, so to speak, if this were a hurricane. That we're in a situation where it's just about cresting. We almost maybe sort of have it under control. I mean, who the hell knows? There is no testing in Texas. But we're ultimately going to end up in a situation where a whole lot more people die because we were worried about getting the economy open with the idea that this is somehow more important than people's lives. And I'm not convinced. I am by no means as liberal as most people in the world. I am an academic. And to a certain crowd, that makes me a flaming liberal by default. But if there's a choice between people and money, you gotta pick people every time. You just gotta. Done right, there's the machines have not disappeared. The demand has gone away because people are holed up. The demand will surge back when people go back to work. Done right, with the proper amount of incentives and stuff to tide people over, I see no reason why this would be detrimental to the economy, other than shortly after the actual events of the viral outbreak. I can say I think that tons of people dying because we were more worried about the Dow Jones than about people, living or dying, is going to be detrimental to the economy in a major way. And we haven't done nearly enough to try to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we are now, in Texas anyway, flirting actively with making sure it does. So since I've gone out as a treat, I'm going to get myself something to eat, and I will leave it here. If you've managed to survive this long period, stay safe, wash your hands, be good to each other, and we'll all get through this together.